Can you kiss me? I want to make him jealous, she begged. Oblivious, she touched the billionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Have you ever felt that kind of emptiness, when you're doing everything you can, yet you feel invisible? Or maybe you've done something you didn't expect, but it changed your life forever? Well, stay with us as we unravel a story of mistaken identity, unexpected love, and the power of second chances. She glanced nervously around the dimly lit restaurant, her hands fidgeting with the edges of her napkin. Emma Brooks had never felt out of place, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but tonight was different. The warm light of the chandeliers and the clinking of silverware around her made everything feel more polished, more expensive than what she was used to. Her dress was second-hand, and her shoes, scuffed from too many wears, weren't quite matching up with the elegant atmosphere. She took a deep breath, reminding herself why she was here, because Jenny, her best friend, had insisted. "You'll have fun," she had said. "You deserve this." Emma's eyes landed on the table by the window where a sharply dressed man sat alone, his attention lost in his phone. That must be him, she thought to herself, her heart racing in her chest. She couldn't back out now. She had promised Jenny she'd go through with it, despite her nerves. She approached the table, forcing a smile. "Hi, you must be Kevin," she said, her voice a little too loud in the otherwise quiet room. The man looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just stared at her in confusion. Hi Emma," he said, his voice low, as if trying to process what just happened. Emma misread his expression as shyness and, without missing a beat, slid into the seat across from him, trying to ease the awkwardness. "I know, this is a bit weird. Blind dates are always strange, right?" She laughed nervously, picking up her water glass. "Jenny told me you might be a little quiet, so don't worry, I'll talk enough for both of us." The man blinked a few times, clearly caught off guard. But instead of correcting her, he paused. His phone buzzed on the table, but he didn't look at it. There was something in Emma's earnest, slightly embarrassed smile that made him hesitate. He decided to play along. "Right, blind dates are something else," he said, offering a faint smile. Emma sighed in relief. She wasn't sure why, but there was something about this man, something that made her feel like maybe she wasn't the only one nervous about the situation. "Tell me about yourself," she said, trying to ease into the conversation. "What do you do?" "I work in tech," he replied, glancing at her for a second. "Tech?" Emma laughed softly, like coding and apps and stuff. She could feel her cheeks redden. "I'm terrible with computers." He smiled, but there was a hint of something else in his expression, something that didn't quite match up with the casual response he had given. He leaned back in his chair, studying her in a way that made Emma feel both self-conscious and oddly seen at the same time. She babbled on, talking about her shifts at the diner, her struggles with paying rent, and her dream of one day opening her own art studio. She had never spoken so openly with a stranger before, but there was something in this man's eyes that made her feel safe. "You're not what I expected," she said, a bit more thoughtfully this time, her voice quieter. "Jenny told me you were reserved, but you're easy to talk to." Liam raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her candidness. "You're easy to talk to too," he said, his voice warmer now. "So, what do you do? Besides being an artist?" Emma's heart skipped a beat at the mention of her dreams. "I'm a waitress," she said, shrugging. "Not exactly glamorous, but it gets the bills paid." The words were out before she could stop them. She had always felt embarrassed about her job, as if it defined her in some way. But there was no judgment in Liam's eyes, just curiosity. "It's more than glamorous," he said, his voice steady. "It takes real courage to do what you do." Emma smiled, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jenny. "Hey, where are you? I'm at table 7 waiting for you. Looking forward to meeting Kevin." Emma's face burned with embarrassment as she reread the message. She looked up at Liam, her mouth dry. "You're not Kevin, are you?" she asked, barely above a whisper. His smile faltered slightly, his gaze shifting from her to his phone, and back to her. "No," he said, his voice soft but apologetic. "I'm not." Emma felt her stomach drop. "Oh my God," she muttered, standing up abruptly. "I'm so sorry. I sat at the wrong table." She turned quickly, her face flushed with shame. "Wait," Liam called after her. "It's okay." But Emma was already halfway to the door, her mind racing. She couldn't believe she had made such a fool of herself. She could hear Liam's voice behind her, but she didn't stop. She had to get out of there. To forget this ever happened. To forget him. But as she stepped into the cool night air, a strange mix of regret and curiosity gnawed at her. There was something about him that made her feel different. But what did that matter? She would never see him again. Or so she thought. The cold night air hit Emma's face as she stepped out of the restaurant, her heart racing with a mix of embarrassment and confusion. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She had made such a fool of herself. But as she walked away, her mind kept returning to him. The man she thought was Kevin. Liam. There was something about the way he looked at her, something that made her feel seen. She paused on the sidewalk, looking back at the restaurant. She had to shake the thought. It wasn't like it mattered. She would never see him again, right? She took a deep breath and kept walking. The bustling streets of the city were busy, but everything felt distant, as if she were in a world of her own. She had been caught up in that moment, and now she needed to move on. The next morning, Emma woke up in her small apartment, the sunlight filtering through the cracked blinds. The smell of stale coffee lingered in the air as she got ready for her shift at the diner. She could barely keep her eyes open. The day before had been a blur of emotions, and she was still reeling from the awkwardness of the night before. But life went on. She couldn't afford to dwell on it. As she pulled on her uniform and tied her apron, she reminded herself why she was doing this. The bills weren't going to pay themselves. Her dreams of one day opening her own art studio seemed as far away as ever, but she couldn't stop chasing them, even if it meant putting up with long hours and rude customers. She made her way to the diner, hoping today would be better than yesterday. When Emma arrived at work, the usual chaos greeted her. The clatter of plates, the hum of the espresso machine, and the chatter of regulars filled the space. She threw her bag in the back and got to work. The morning rush was as hectic as always, and she barely had a chance to think before the doors swung open, signaling the arrival of a new customer. She didn't look up at first, focused on pouring coffee for another table. But when she heard the voice, she froze. "Hey, Emma, right?" a familiar voice said. She looked up, and there he was, Liam. He was standing at the door, dressed casually in a simple grey sweater and jeans, looking nothing like the polished businessman she had imagined him to be. He was smiling at her, his eyes warm and inviting. She felt her face flush as she wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly unsure of what to say. "Liam," she managed, her voice a little shaky. "What are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood," he said, glancing around. "Thought I'd grab a coffee. Figured I'd stop by and say hi, if that's okay." Emma's mind raced. What was he doing here? She had no idea. Was he just being polite? Or had he come here because he was curious about her? She tried not to overthink it as she gestured toward an empty booth. "Sure, take a seat." "I'll be right with you," she said, trying to sound casual, even though her heart was pounding. She didn't know why, but his presence made everything feel different. She quickly went to grab the coffee pot and returned to the table. She noticed how much more relaxed he looked now, and how his presence seemed to put her at ease, despite the awkwardness. They sat in silence for a moment, Emma pouring coffee for him, trying to figure out what this meant. She didn't know what he wanted. And she certainly didn't know what to say to him now, after everything that had happened. But the more she looked at him, the more she realized he wasn't like other men she had met. He was kind. And that, in itself, was something she wasn't used to. He didn't seem to expect anything from her, didn't make her feel small the way others did. "So, what's your story, Emma?" Liam asked, breaking the silence. "What made you want to work here?" She smiled a little, feeling the warmth of the coffee cup in her hands. "Honestly, it's just a job. I'm saving up for a studio. Always dreamed of painting full-time, but, you know, bills and rent kind of get in the way." He nodded, looking genuinely interested. "That's actually really impressive. Most people just give up on their dreams after a while. But you're still chasing yours. I like that." Emma was taken aback by his words. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. It felt good. It felt real. She wasn't sure how to respond, but before she could, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down at it, her heart sinking when she saw the message from Jenny, "Don't let him get away. Call me later." She shook her head, trying to push the thought of Jenny's advice aside. She didn't need to think about that right now. She had enough on her plate. Just the fact that Liam was here felt like too much already. "I should get back to work," Emma said, setting her coffee pot down with a soft clink. "It was nice talking to you though, Liam." "Really?" She gave him a small smile. Liam stood up, his hand lingering on the edge of the table. "I'll let you get back to it. But I'd like to see you again, Emma. You know, outside of this place. Maybe we could grab dinner sometime." His voice was light, casual, but there was something else in it, a sincerity that she hadn't expected. Emma blinked, unsure of what to say. Dinner? She hadn't exactly expected that. Her mind flashed to a million thoughts at once, but one thing stood out: he was different. He wasn't like anyone she'd met before. And despite her nerves, she found herself nodding. "Okay," she said, her voice a little quieter than usual. "I'd like that." As he smiled and left, Emma felt her heart race again. She had no idea where this was going, but for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something more than she ever expected. The next few days passed in a blur for Emma. She couldn't stop thinking about Liam and that unexpected invitation for dinner. At first, she convinced herself it was nothing more than a friendly gesture, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized it felt different. She was used to people looking at her with pity or indifference, but Liam? He had treated her with respect, as if she mattered, as if her dreams were worth something. But she couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too good to be true. People like him didn't fall for people like her. The morning after their brief encounter at the diner, she woke up to find herself caught between her doubts and the flutter of hope that had begun to form in her chest. It was the middle of the afternoon when Emma's phone buzzed on the counter of the diner, breaking her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Liam. "Hey, Emma. I know you're working, but I was wondering if you're free this evening? Thought we could grab a quick bite to eat, just the two of us. No pressure, just dinner." The message seemed harmless enough, but Emma's stomach flipped. Her fingers hovered over the phone screen, her mind racing. She had planned on spending the night at home, working on some new sketches for her portfolio, but a part of her knew she couldn't say no to him. She wasn't sure why, but there was something magnetic about him, something that made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. "Why not?" she typed, her hands trembling slightly as she hit send. She couldn't believe she was actually agreeing to this. It had been a long time since she had allowed herself to get swept up in something like this, but there was something about Liam that made her feel like maybe it was worth the risk. The night came quickly, and she found herself standing in front of the mirror in her small apartment, wondering if she should change. She had a million things running through her mind: what to wear, what to say, how to act, but in the end, she just decided to keep it simple. She put on a modest black dress she'd found at a thrift store, paired it with her most comfortable heels, and tied her hair up in a loose bun. She didn't want to seem like she was trying too hard, but she still wanted to look nice. When she arrived at the restaurant, she immediately spotted Liam sitting at a corner table, his casual attire a stark contrast to the sleek surroundings of the upscale place. As soon as he saw her, he stood up, a smile spreading across his face. "Hey, Emma," he greeted her warmly, his voice smooth but genuine. "You look great." Emma felt a blush creep up her neck as she awkwardly mumbled, "Thanks," before taking a seat across from him. There was an ease to the way he carried himself, as if he had done this 1,000 times before, but he didn't make her feel out of place. In fact, he made her feel comfortable. She couldn't quite explain why, but she was grateful for it. They spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing, work, dreams, the best places to grab coffee in the city, and even their favorite movies. The conversation flowed so easily that Emma forgot to be nervous, forgot to overthink everything. It was like they had known each other for years instead of just a few awkward moments at a restaurant. Liam didn't seem in any rush, and Emma felt herself relaxing more with each passing minute. It wasn't just the conversation that was drawing her in, it was his attentiveness, the way he listened as if he truly cared about what she was saying. At one point, Emma found herself telling him more than she had intended. She mentioned her struggles, working 2 jobs, barely scraping by, and how she had always dreamed of becoming a full-time artist but never seemed to have the time or money to make it happen. She even told him about the small art studio she dreamed of opening, a place where people could create and feel inspired. When she finished, she looked up to see Liam studying her with a soft expression on his face. "You know," he said quietly, "I don't think you should give up on that dream. You're too talented to let it go. There's more to you than just waiting tables." His words hit her harder than she expected. It had been a long time since anyone had said something so encouraging, so genuine. Emma felt a lump form in her throat, but she quickly swallowed it down. "Thanks, Liam," she said, her voice a little unsteady. "That means a lot to me." Liam smiled, but his gaze was intense, as if he saw more in her than she had ever seen in herself. As the evening wore on, the connection between them only deepened, and Emma began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was more to this than just a casual dinner. But then, just as she was starting to think that maybe this could be something real, her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Jenny. "Is he everything you thought he would be? Don't forget, you're still chasing that dream." Emma's stomach tightened as she read the words. It was like Jenny was trying to remind her to stay grounded, to not get caught up in something that might not last. Emma glanced up at Liam, who was now watching her with a concerned look. She realized he had caught her change in expression. "You okay?" he asked softly. She gave him a small smile, not wanting to ruin the mood, but something inside her stirred. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking." Liam nodded, but he didn't press her for more. "Well, I'm glad you came tonight," he said. "I was hoping we could do this again sometime." Emma felt her heart flutter at his words, but at the same time, doubt crept in. She wasn't sure if she was ready for something real, not with all the things in her life that still needed fixing. But then again, maybe this was the start of something she couldn't ignore. Maybe it was time to start believing in herself. And maybe, just maybe, Liam was the person who could help her do that. The days following their dinner were a whirlwind for Emma, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was changing. She kept replaying the evening in her head, his kind words echoing in her mind. Liam was different from anyone she had ever met. Not just because of his wealth or status, but because he genuinely seemed to care about her dreams, her struggles, everything. But with that came a nagging doubt. She couldn't let herself get carried away by the attention, not when she still had so much to figure out in her life. She couldn't help but wonder if this was all just some fantasy, a brief moment of connection that would eventually fade away. One afternoon, Emma found herself sitting in her tiny apartment, staring at her sketchbook. She had been trying to draw for hours, but the blank page in front of her refused to yield. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Liam. He had told her she could achieve her dreams, that she was more than just a waitress. His words had meant so much to her, but now, she wasn't sure how to take them. Was he just being nice? Or did he really see something in her? She sighed, running a hand through her hair, frustrated with herself. It felt like every time she was close to something good, she pulled away. Maybe she wasn't ready for whatever this was. Maybe it was better to just keep things simple, to not complicate her life with emotions she didn't have time to explore. But as if the universe was trying to prove her wrong, her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. She glanced down at the screen and saw a message from Liam. "Hey Emma, I was thinking about you. I know you're busy, but would you be up for seeing each other again? Maybe this weekend." Her heart skipped a beat. She had been expecting him to back off, to lose interest as quickly as he had appeared. But instead, here he was, reaching out again. The message felt like a lifeline, a promise that there was something real here, something worth exploring. But at the same time, the familiar walls she had spent years building around herself began to rise again. What was she really doing? Could she let herself trust someone like him? Emma stared at the message for what felt like an eternity before typing back, "I'd love to. This weekend sounds great." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. She wasn't sure where this was going, but for once, she didn't want to stop it. She wanted to see where it could take her. That night, she found herself tossing and turning, sleep evading her as the weight of her emotion settled in. For the first time in a long time, she was starting to let herself hope. But could she really let herself fall for someone like Liam? The thought spiraled in her mind until, finally, exhaustion took over. The weekend arrived in what seemed like the blink of an eye. Emma spent the morning getting ready, trying on different outfits in front of the mirror. She wanted to look nice, but not too nice. She didn't want Liam to think she was trying too hard. In the end, she settled on a simple blue dress and a pair of flats. As she stood in front of the mirror, she reminded herself to relax. This wasn't a date, not really. It was just two people getting to know each other. Nothing more. But as the time for their meeting approached, she couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement. When she finally stepped out of her apartment, the cool breeze of the evening air felt refreshing, and she allowed herself a small smile as she made her way to the cafe where they had agreed to meet. When Emma arrived, Liam was already there, sitting at a corner table with a casual yet elegant air about him. He stood up when he saw her, his eyes lighting up with a warmth that made Emma's heart skip a beat. "Hey, Emma," he greeted her, his voice full of genuine warmth. "You look amazing." She felt her cheeks flush at the compliment, but she smiled and sat down across from him. They exchanged pleasantries, talking about their weeks, the things that had kept them busy, but this time, the conversation felt different. It felt more intimate, more real. As they spoke, Emma found herself opening up in a way she hadn't expected. She talked about her struggles with balancing her job and her dreams, how she often felt like she was running in place, unable to make real progress. And Liam? He listened intently, offering support and encouragement without judgment. As the evening wore on, Emma felt more and more comfortable with him. She realized that Liam wasn't just the millionaire CEO she had first thought he was. He was kind, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in who she was. But as the night came to a close, she found herself grappling with the same feelings of doubt she had felt before. Could someone like him really want to be with someone like her? Could he truly care about her and not just her circumstances? She didn't know the answer, but for the first time, she found herself willing to try. She didn't want to run from this connection. Not this time. When the check came, Liam insisted on paying, despite her protests. "I'm serious," he said with a laugh, "let me do this. You can get the next one." Emma smiled, but the feeling of unease lingered. As they walked out of the cafe together, Liam turned to her with a soft smile. "I had a really great time tonight, Emma. I hope we can do it again soon." She nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of hope and fear. "I'd like that," she replied quietly. As she made her way home that night, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that things were starting to change, but in the best way possible. She wasn't sure where this was going, but she was willing to take the risk. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something special. The days following their dinner were a whirlwind of emotions for Emma. She couldn't stop thinking about Liam and the connection they had started to build. Every time she replayed their conversations in her head, she felt like maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something real. But as the days went on, the doubt that had always lingered in the back of her mind crept back in. She had lived her whole life feeling like she didn't quite belong in the world of people like Liam. He was wealthy, confident, and seemed to have everything under control, while she was just a waitress struggling to make ends meet, with dreams that always seemed just out of reach. Yet, the more time she spent with him, the more she realized that maybe he didn't see her that way. Maybe, just maybe, he saw her for who she truly was. One evening, as she was closing up the diner, Emma's phone buzzed on the counter. She was exhausted, and her feet ached from hours of standing and serving customers, but she picked it up anyway. It was a text from Liam. "Hey Emma, I've been thinking about you. I was wondering if you're free tomorrow. Maybe we could go for a walk in the park, grab some coffee afterward? Let me know." Her heart skipped a beat at the message. She had spent the entire evening trying to push thoughts of him out of her mind, but here he was again, reaching out. She could feel the excitement bubbling up inside her, but at the same time, a wave of uncertainty washed over her. Was this really happening? Was this something real, or was she just setting herself up for disappointment? She put the phone down for a moment, trying to steady her thoughts. She had to stop second-guessing everything. The truth was, she didn't want to walk away from this. She wanted to see where it could go. The next morning, Emma woke up with a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in a long time. She got ready quickly, pulling on a comfortable pair of jeans and a sweater, wanting to look nice but not too dressed up. She wanted to be herself, not someone she thought Liam would want her to be. As she walked to the park, the cool air filled her lungs, and she felt a strange sense of peace. She was doing something for herself today, something that didn't involve work or worrying about the bills piling up at home. When she arrived at the park, she spotted Liam almost immediately. He was sitting on a bench under a large oak tree, his hands in his pockets, looking up at the sky. He looked so relaxed, so different from the serious businessman she had met at the restaurant. When he saw her, he stood up and smiled, and it made Emma's heart race. "Hey, Emma," he greeted her warmly. "I'm glad you came." They spent the next hour walking through the park, talking about everything and nothing at all. Emma felt herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. She told him about her childhood, about the dreams she had of painting and owning her own studio, but also about the fears she carried, the ones that held her back from chasing those dreams. She admitted how hard it was to balance her work with her passion for art, how sometimes it felt like no matter how hard she tried, she was always one step behind. Liam listened, his expression soft and understanding. "You know," he said after a moment, "I've been where you are. I get it. But I also know you can do it. You're stronger than you think, Emma. You've already made it this far." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had never really thought about it like that before. To her, it had always felt like a constant struggle, just barely keeping her head above water. But hearing Liam say those words made her feel like maybe she was capable of more than she gave herself credit for. Maybe she could actually make her dreams a reality, even if it meant taking risks and facing the fear that had been holding her back all this time. As they continued walking, Liam told her more about his own life, about his childhood, the pressure of growing up with so much expectation, and how he had worked so hard to build the company he ran now. But what struck Emma the most was how he spoke about his family. It wasn't just about the wealth or the success, it was about what really mattered to him, about the people who had supported him, who had believed in him, even when things got tough. Emma realized then that Liam wasn't just a businessman or a billionaire. He was a person with real, honest emotions, just like her. He wasn't perfect, but he was kind, and he genuinely wanted to see her succeed. By the time they reached the coffee shop, Emma felt like she had learned more about him in the past couple of hours than she had about anyone in years. She didn't know where this connection would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to find out. After getting their drinks, they sat by the window, watching the world go by, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But just as things started to feel easy, Emma's phone buzzed in her bag. She glanced down at it and saw a text from Jenny. "Are you sure about this? Don't forget who he is. You can't let yourself get distracted from your goals." Emma's heart sank for a moment, and she looked at Liam, who was talking about his next big project at work. She felt torn between the comfort of this new connection and the reality of her own struggles. But as she looked at Liam, she knew this wasn't about him being a millionaire or her dreams being too far out of reach. It was about believing in herself, and maybe, just maybe, Liam was the person who could help her do that. The next few days felt like a blur for Emma. She had agreed to meet Liam again, and now, with every passing minute, her nerves grew. Was this really happening? Was she really spending time with a man who seemed to care about her, someone who didn't see her just as a waitress or as someone stuck in a cycle of struggling to get by? As the evening of their next meeting approached, she tried to push away the nagging doubt that had crept in after reading Jenny's message. "Are you sure about this?" Jenny's words echoed in her mind. She had spent so much of her life focused on getting by, never really allowing herself to believe that something better was possible. But as the days passed and Liam continued to reach out, she couldn't deny that she felt something genuine between them. He had shown her kindness and had been patient with her in ways she had never experienced. And yet, there was still that lingering fear that she might be setting herself up for disappointment. The night they were supposed to meet, Emma was pacing in her apartment. She had chosen a simple outfit, nothing too fancy, just a light sweater and jeans. She wanted to look good, but not like she was trying too hard. As she checked the time for the 5th time, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was Liam, with a simple message, "Hey, I'm at the restaurant. Can't wait to see you." Emma smiled at the message, though a part of her couldn't help but feel that familiar sense of dread. She grabbed her coat and headed out the door, reminding herself that she was allowed to take chances, to be vulnerable. She couldn't keep running from everything, especially not this connection with Liam. She deserved this, she thought to herself as she made her way to the restaurant. When she arrived, Liam was already there, sitting at the same corner table they had shared last time. He looked up as she entered, and his face lit up with a smile that made Emma's heart skip a beat. "Hey, Emma," he greeted her, his voice warm. "You look amazing." Emma felt a rush of warmth spread through her at his words, though her nerves were still there. She had spent so much of her life trying to shrink herself, to be small and invisible, but with Liam, she didn't feel like she had to do that. She sat down, and they immediately fell into easy conversation. It was like no time had passed at all, as if they had been talking like this for years. They shared a meal together, talking about everything and nothing, just like before. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in a long time, her nerves slowly melting away. Liam listened intently to everything she said, his focus entirely on her. She couldn't remember the last time someone had given her that kind of attention, where it felt like nothing else mattered, just the moment they were sharing. As they finished their meal, Liam leaned back in his chair, looking at her with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Emma," he said quietly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day. About your dreams." She looked up at him, unsure where this was going. "You're not just a waitress," he continued, his voice steady but full of emotion. "You're more than that. You've got something special in you. And I believe you can make it happen, whatever it is you want to do." Emma felt her breath catch in her throat. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. His words were exactly what she needed to hear, but they also terrified her. She had spent so long convincing herself that her dreams were too far out of reach, that they were just fantasies. But hearing him say that, it made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, they weren't as impossible as she had thought. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft. "That means more than you know." Liam smiled, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "I mean it," he said. "I don't want you to sell yourself short, Emma. You've got more potential than you realize. And I'm here to support you in whatever way I can." His words were like a balm to her soul, and for the first time in a long time, Emma let herself believe that maybe she could really do this, she could really chase her dreams. The night went on, and as they walked outside, Liam offered to walk her home. Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure if she was ready for that step yet, but she didn't want to pull away either. She had spent so long keeping people at arm's length, but with Liam, it felt different. He wasn't asking for anything more than her company. They strolled together under the stars, talking about everything, her art, his work, their lives, and for the first time, Emma felt like maybe she wasn't so alone in the world. Maybe there was someone out there who truly cared. When they reached her apartment building, Liam stopped and turned to face her, his hand brushing against hers. "I'm really glad we did this," he said, his voice low. "I feel like we have a real connection, Emma. And I hope you feel the same." Emma's heart was racing. She couldn't find the words, but she didn't need to. The look in his eyes told her everything. She smiled, nodding. "I do," she said softly. "I really do." Liam smiled back, his eyes lighting up. "Good," he said. "Because this is just the beginning." And in that moment, Emma realized that for the first time in a long time, she was allowing herself to hope. And maybe, just maybe, that was all she needed to take the next step toward her dreams, meeting filling her with a sense of excitement she hadn't felt in years. Every time they met, it was like the world outside their little bubble disappeared. They spent time in coffee shops, walked through the city's parks, and even attended a few art galleries together. With each passing day, Emma found herself drawn more and more to him, and the connection between them grew stronger. He wasn't just the charming, successful CEO she had initially thought him to be, he was kind, genuine, and most importantly, he believed in her dreams, in her ability to become the artist she always wanted to be. It was something Emma had never had before, a partner who truly wanted to help her succeed. But despite how much she enjoyed their time together, there was always a lingering fear in the back of her mind. The doubt she had tried to push away started creeping back. Liam's world was so different from hers. He had everything: success, wealth, influence, and she? She was still struggling, still trying to make ends meet, still dreaming of a future that felt so far out of reach. Emma couldn't help but wonder if Liam was starting to see that difference too. She wondered if he was only helping her because it made him feel good, or because he felt some sort of responsibility for her. Her insecurities kept bubbling to the surface, and she began to wonder if this connection could truly go anywhere. One evening, after a particularly wonderful date, as they walked back to her apartment, the weight of her thoughts became too much to bear. She had been silent for most of their walk, her mind racing. When they reached her building, Liam stopped and turned to face her, his expression full of concern. "Emma," he said softly, "what's going on? You've been distant tonight." Emma's heart sank. She had been trying so hard to keep up the facade that everything was fine, that she was fine, but now it was all unraveling. She could feel her chest tightening, and she didn't know how to hide the truth anymore. I don't know," she said, her voice shaky. "I just feel like I don't belong in your world, Liam. You're a CEO, and I'm just a waitress. You have everything, and I'm still trying to figure things out. I don't want to drag you into my mess. You deserve someone who fits with the life you have." She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but the words came tumbling out faster than she could stop them. "I don't want you to feel like you have to fix me or take care of me just because you can. I don't want to be a charity case." Her throat tightened, and she quickly wiped away a tear that had slipped down her cheek. She hadn't meant to cry. She hadn't meant to unload all her fears onto him, but it was as if everything she had been holding in had suddenly burst free. Liam didn't say anything for a moment. He just stood there, his eyes soft but serious, studying her as if he were seeing her for the first time. Emma felt vulnerable, exposed, as if she had revealed a part of herself she had kept hidden for years. And just when she thought he might walk away, Liam stepped closer, gently cupping her face in his hands. "Emma," he said, his voice low but firm. "You think I don't see you? You think I don't see the woman you are? The woman who works hard every single day to make her dreams come true. You think I don't see the strength in you, even when you're doubting yourself? His thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away the last of her tears. You're not a charity case. You're someone who's been through so much and is still standing. And I admire that more than anything. He paused, letting his words sink in. I don't want you to fit into some idea of what you think my life is. I want you to be you. And if you want to chase your dreams, I'll be here to help you, to support you, no matter what. His gaze held hers, full of sincerity. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what to say. All her fears, all her doubts, seemed so small now, compared to the way Liam was looking at her. She had never felt so seen, so understood. She had spent so much time pushing people away, keeping them at arm's length because she was afraid of getting hurt, afraid of not measuring up. But Liam wasn't asking her to change. He was accepting her as she was, flaws and all. For the first time in her life, Emma realized that maybe she didn't have to hide anymore. Maybe, just maybe, she could take the risk and let someone in. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her heart racing. I'm just scared, Liam. Scared that I'm not enough. She looked down, feeling the weight of her fears, but when she looked back up at him, she saw something in his eyes that made her believe, even if just for a moment, that she could be enough. You are more than enough, he said softly, his voice full of conviction. And I'm not going anywhere. Emma felt something inside her shift. It was like the walls she had built around herself, the walls that had kept her safe, were beginning to crack. Maybe it was time to stop hiding, to stop believing that she didn't deserve good things. Maybe it was time to believe in herself, and in the possibility of a future that wasn't filled with fear, but with hope. She took a deep breath, finally allowing herself to relax into his embrace. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing me. And for the first time in a long time, Emma let herself believe that she was worthy of love, worthy of chasing her dreams, and worthy of everything that was unfolding before her. The days after their conversation felt like a new beginning for Emma. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something more, something real. Liam's words echoed in her mind every day, reminding her that she wasn't alone, that she didn't have to carry the weight of her dreams and fears by herself. With each passing day, she felt the walls around her heart slowly begin to crumble, and she found herself opening up more, not just to Liam, but to herself as well. She started making plans, small steps toward her future, things she had put off for so long because she was too afraid to fail. But now, with Liam's support, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just Liam's encouragement that had made a difference. Emma had started to realize that the biggest obstacle she had been facing was herself. She had spent so much of her life questioning her worth, doubting her abilities, and believing she wasn't good enough. But with each conversation, each moment spent with Liam, she began to see herself differently. She wasn't just a waitress, or someone stuck in a cycle of disappointment, she was a woman with dreams, with the strength to pursue them, no matter how difficult it seemed. She had always had that strength, but now, she was ready to acknowledge it. One evening, as Emma was working at the diner, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. Hey Emma, I've been thinking a lot about you and your art. I'd love to help you make your dream a reality. I know a few people who might be able to help get your studio started. What do you think? Emma's heart skipped a beat as she read the message. She had been thinking about taking the next step for a while now, looking into spaces for her art studio, making that dream she had held onto for so long a reality, but hearing Liam's offer of help made her hesitate. She didn't want to take advantage of him, didn't want him to think that she was using him just because he had the resources she didn't. But then, she remembered what he had told her before, that he wasn't offering help out of pity, but because he believed in her. She quickly typed back, I'd love to learn more. Let's talk about it soon. Thank you so much for believing in me. After sending the message, Emma felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had no idea where this would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was finally taking charge of her own future. The next day, Liam invited her to meet at a local cafe. When she arrived, he was already sitting at a corner table, waiting for her with a warm smile on his face. He looked casual in a button-up shirt and jeans, nothing like the polished businessman she had first met. There was something about him now that made her feel like they were on equal ground. They weren't in separate worlds anymore. They were just two people, sitting across from each other, talking about their dreams. "So, I've been doing some thinking," Liam said, after Emma sat down. "I know a few people in the art world who could help you with the financial side of things. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. You've got the talent, Emma. And I'm not going to sit back and watch you let that go to waste." His words made Emma's heart swell with gratitude, but also a bit of uncertainty. "I don't want to feel like I'm taking advantage of you," she said, her voice quiet. "I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I don't want you to think that I'm just using you." Liam's smile softened. "Emma, I'm offering help because I believe in you. It's not about me helping you because I can, it's about me seeing someone with incredible potential and wanting to see them succeed. You don't have to apologize for that." Her chest tightened with emotion. For the first time, she felt truly understood. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what to say. You've given me a chance I never thought I'd have." Liam nodded, his expression serious now. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We're just getting started. But I promise you, I won't let you give up on yourself." As they talked about the next steps, Emma couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. She was finally taking action, finally stepping into a future she had only dreamed of. And with Liam by her side, supporting her in ways she never imagined, she knew she wasn't doing it alone. They finished their conversation with a plan. Liam would introduce her to the right people, help her find the right space for her studio, and guide her through the process of making her dream a reality. Emma couldn't believe it. The dream she had been holding onto for so long was no longer a distant hope, it was within reach. As they stood to leave, Liam touched her arm gently, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I'm proud of you, Emma," he said. "You're finally seeing what I've always seen in you." Emma's heart swelled with warmth at his words. She wasn't just seeing her potential through his eyes, she was starting to see it in herself. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice barely above a breath. "For everything." Emma walked home that night feeling like she was on the verge of something incredible. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the future. She was ready to face it, ready to take the next step toward her dreams. And with Liam's unwavering support, she knew she could do it. The weeks that followed felt like a whirlwind of progress and new beginnings for Emma. With Liam's help, she began to take her dreams more seriously. They had scouted locations for her studio, and Liam had introduced her to people in the art world who could help fund her vision. Every day, she found herself moving closer to something she had once thought was impossible. It wasn't easy, and there were many late nights spent worrying over the details, but with Liam by her side, she no longer felt like she was alone in the struggle. He didn't just believe in her dreams, he made them feel like a reality. As the months went by, Emma began to see her art studio come together. The space was small but filled with potential. The walls, once bare, were now covered with her paintings, each one representing a step toward the life she had always wanted. And as she looked around, she realized it wasn't just the studio that had changed, it was her too. She had grown stronger, more confident in her abilities, and more willing to embrace the unknown. It wasn't just her professional life that had shifted, her personal life had taken a turn as well. She and Liam had grown closer, and what had started as a simple connection had blossomed into something much deeper. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, understanding, and trust. With every conversation, every shared moment, Emma found herself falling more and more in love with him. But it wasn't just the way he supported her dreams, it was the way he saw her, not just as someone with potential, but as someone worthy of love and happiness. He made her feel like she mattered, like her dreams were worth fighting for. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt so seen, so valued. It wasn't just his words, it was his actions. Liam didn't just promise to support her, he showed up, day after day, in ways that made her heart swell with gratitude. One evening, as Emma was preparing for her first big gallery opening at the new studio, Liam surprised her with a visit. He had been away on a business trip for a few days, and Emma had missed him more than she cared to admit. She was busy putting the final touches on the gallery, making sure everything was perfect for the event, but when Liam walked through the door, her heart skipped a beat. He looked at her with that warm, knowing smile that always made her feel like everything was going to be okay. "You're doing amazing, Emma," he said, his voice full of pride. "I'm so proud of you." She smiled back, feeling a surge of emotion. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and having Liam there with her, seeing the fruits of her labor, made everything feel so much more meaningful. As the night of the gallery opening arrived, Emma stood in the center of the room, surrounded by her paintings, her dreams finally taking shape. She could hardly believe how far she had come, from a waitress, struggling to make ends meet, to a woman with a successful art studio. The opening was a success, and the excitement in the air was palpable as people admired her work and expressed their admiration for her talent. But even as she basked in the success, Emma knew that the real victory wasn't in the praise or the sales, it was in the fact that she had made it, that she had taken the leap and trusted herself enough to build a life she had always dreamed of. At the end of the evening, after the last guest had left, Emma stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. She could feel Liam standing behind her, his presence comforting and steady. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and she turned to face him, a smile spreading across her face. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said softly. "Thank you for believing in me." Liam smiled, his eyes full of affection. "You did this, Emma. I just helped you see it. You've always had this in you." She looked up at him, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. She had never imagined that a chance encounter would lead her here, to this moment, to a future filled with possibilities. But standing in the studio, with Liam by her side, she realized that sometimes life surprises you in the best possible ways. As the months passed, Emma's studio flourished, and so did her relationship with Liam. What had started as a partnership had grown into something deeper, something more real, more lasting. They supported each other's goals, shared in each other's successes, and faced challenges together. Emma had learned that love wasn't just about finding someone who completed you, it was about finding someone who believed in you, who encouraged you to be the best version of yourself, even when you didn't believe in yourself. And in Liam, she had found exactly that. One evening, as they sat on the rooftop of her studio, watching the sun set over the city, Liam turned to Emma, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. "Emma," he said, his voice steady. "I don't think I've ever told you this, but I love you. I love you for who you are, for everything you've done, and for the person you've helped me become. I can't imagine my life without you in it." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had known it for a while, but hearing him say it out loud made everything feel even more real. "I love you too," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "I never thought I could have this, but here we are. And I'm so grateful." In that moment, as they embraced on the rooftop, Emma realized that love, like her art, was something that had grown over time, something that had taken patience, vulnerability, and trust. And just like her dreams, it was now something she could finally reach out and hold. They didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain, whatever came next, they would face it together.